The frosted glass door of Rosso's restaurant swings inward at 11:06 p.m. on a winter night so clear and cold it burns the lungs. Wind screams through the opening like a blade wrapped in ice. Mia Santos stumbles through, and the world tilts sideways. She is 27 years old but looks decades older. Her black and white maid's uniform hangs torn at the collar. Hair plasters her pale face, matted with sweat and blood. Above her left eye, a gash runs deep, splitting the skin like a knife through paper. Blood streams down her cheek in a ribbon of crimson. She crashes against the mahogany hostess stand. Her hand smears red across the polished wood. No one moves to help her. The restaurant is empty, closed for the night, the dining room a cathedral of darkness and silence and unused tables. Except for the booth. In the back left corner, hidden behind mahogany partitions that reach toward the vaulted ceiling, Nico Rossi sits motionless in red leather. He is tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a suit that costs more than Mia's annual salary. His dark hair is streaked silver at the temples. A scar runs from beneath his left eye to his jawline, a geography of survival written in flesh. Beside him sit Tony and Sal. Both wear expensive suits. Both have hands that rest too close to jackets that hide metal and death. Both go absolutely still. Because Mia Santos has collapsed against the booth partition. Blood drips from her chin onto the red leather. She does not know who this man is. She only knows he is bleeding. Nico's hand presses against his side. Beneath his white shirt, dark blood seeps through like a stain spreading through water. His face has turned the color of wet concrete. His breathing comes shallow, rationed, like every inhale costs him something he cannot afford. She reaches for a napkin from a nearby table. Her hand shakes so badly she nearly drops it. She presses the white cloth against his wound, and Nico's eyes snap open. Pain crosses his face like a storm, but something else crosses it too, clarity. Focus. The look of a man seeing something that matters. Stay with me, Mia whispers, and her voice breaks like fractured glass. Stay with me, please. Help is coming. Help is coming. Tony's hand moves toward his jacket. Sal stands, reaching for the gun beneath his suit. But Nico lifts one hand, just barely, just enough. A gesture worn thin by power and suffering. They freeze. Mia does not notice them. She presses harder against the wound, her palm soaked red, and leans closer. She speaks to him the way you speak to someone drowning. She speaks to him the way she once spoke to her mother before the machine stopped beeping. Your name, she says. What is your name? Nico, he whispers, and the word costs him. Nico Rossi. She does not understand what that name means. She does not understand that the man bleeding beneath her hands controls half of Boston's underworld. She does not understand that Tony and Sal have never, in 15 years of service, seen anyone touch their boss without dying. She only understands that a man is dying and she is the only person reaching for him. 30 minutes later, sirens will wail through the Boston night. 30 men dressed in black will exit black SUVs with military precision. They will move through this restaurant like ghosts. They will find Mia Santos still pressing a napkin against Nico Rossi's wound, still whispering, "Stay with me. Please stay with me." And in that moment, everything will change. But that moment has not arrived yet. What arrives first is the cold. The brutal Boston winter cold that Mia has known her entire life. The cold that seeps through apartment walls with no heat. The cold that freezes the tips of your fingers purple when you stand outside a church for 8 hours, waiting for the free soup kitchen to open. The cold that reminds you every single day that you have no shelter. Now let us go back. Let us go back to earlier that winter night, before the frosted glass door opened, before blood bloomed on mahogany and leather, before Mia Santos walked into a restaurant that cost more to rent for an evening than she has earned in the last 6 months. Let us go back to the place where she was still invisible. 3 blocks from Rosso's restaurant, in a neighborhood where the buildings lean against each other like tired old men, sits a Victorian mansion converted into 16 apartments. Tenants come and go. Tenants die and are replaced. Tenants do not complain because complaining is a luxury reserved for people with options. Mia Santos cleans apartments for Harold Brennan. Harold is 58 years old but carries himself like a man who owns the world and cannot imagine why anyone would challenge his ownership. He stands 6'3". His hair is silver and swept back with gel that smells like artificial rain. His eyes are pale blue, the color of frozen water. He wears linen shirts in winter and summer both, a deliberate display of temperature control, a man so wealthy that seasons do not touch him. On this winter night, Mia finishes cleaning apartment 8C. She has been on her feet for 12 hours. She worked the breakfast shift at a diner, serving eggs and toast to people who did not see her face. She worked the lunch shift. Then she came here, to the mansion, to clean the apartments of people who had decided long ago that she was furniture. Her hands are red from bleach. Her back throbs from bending. Her feet have achieved a kind of numbness that feels like mercy. She is pushing her cleaning cart toward the service stairs when Harold blocks the hallway. He stands in the doorway of apartment 8B, and his voice carries the tone of a man accustomed to obedience. My office. Now. Mia does not want to go. Something in her chest tightens. Something old and broken inside her remembers the last time Harold called her into his office. And the time before that. And the time before that. But Mia is the kind of person who does what she is told. The office is on the first floor. Dark paneling. A desk that costs more than everything Mia owns. Floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the winter-dead garden. Harold closes the door behind her, and the click of the lock is the only sound in the room. He sits behind the desk and gestures for her to stand in front of it. His fingers tap against the leather desktop, a rhythm that sounds like a countdown to something terrible. Your rent is due, he says. Mia nods. Rent is always due. Rent is the thing that consumes every dollar before she has time to hold it. $1,200, Harold continues. Due in 2 weeks. Mia's throat closes. She has $200 in her pocket. $200 in the entire world. She has been saving for 6 months, eating 1 meal a day, choosing between heat and food, and she has managed $200. She needs $1,200. I will have it, Mia says. Her voice sounds very small and very far away. Harold stands. He walks around the desk. He is so tall that when he stands near her, she feels like, you cannot, or you will not. Harold asks softly. I will not, Mia whispers. His other hand grips the collar of her uniform. He pulls downward, tearing the fabric. The sound splits the silence like a gunshot. Mia feels air on her collarbone, feels the exposure of it, and something inside her breaks. She pushes back. Hard. Desperate. Her shoulder connects with his chest, and Harold staggers backward. He hits the desk. His face flushes red with rage. He begins. Mia runs. She runs toward the door. Harold catches her wrist, spins her around, and slams her against the kitchen wall. The plaster cracks behind her head. Pain explodes in her skull. Blood pools in her mouth, and she realizes she has bitten through her own cheek. 2 weeks, Harold hisses, and his breath smells like whiskey. Bring the money or bring yourself. Those are your only options. She does not remember leaving the mansion. She does not remember running through the frozen streets of Boston. She does not remember the wind cutting through the tear in her uniform. She only remembers the moment when the frosted glass door of Rosso's restaurant swings inward, and she collapses against the mahogany stand, leaving blood on everything. She only remembers a man dying. And the way his eyes found hers before she even understood what she was saving. The marble foyer gleamed like a mirror of ice, and Mia Santos knelt upon it on her knees, her black and white uniform starched so crisp it felt like paper against her skin, her hands working in circles across the cold stone. Polish, water, cloth. Polish, water, cloth. The rhythm was the only thing that kept her breathing steady. Around her, the Beacon Hill mansion breathed with the weight of old money and older secrets. 17 rooms, 3 stories, 42 windows looking out onto Boston's most exclusive neighborhood, and in all of it, she was a ghost. 8 years. 8 years of moving through these halls like smoke, invisible to the family, to the guests, to anyone who mattered. The Brennan household had stopped seeing her somewhere around year 2. By year 5, they looked directly through her as though she were made of air. A man in a charcoal suit passed her without glancing down. Then a woman in heels that clicked against the marble like a countdown. Mia did not look up. Looking up meant existing, and existing meant being noticed, and being noticed meant being remembered, and being remembered meant someday someone would ask her real questions about her life, and she could not afford for anyone to know how thin the thread was that held her to this house, to this city, to any life at all. She had $200 in her bank account. $200. The foreclosure notice was tucked into the zippered pocket of her jacket in the staff closet, folded so many times the creases had begun to tear. $65,000. She had 14 days before the bank seized everything, the studio apartment in Dorchester that she rented for $1,200 a month, the second-hand furniture, the mattress she had found on the curb 2 years ago and disinfected with her own hands. Everything. At 7:15 p.m., Mia heard small footsteps running through the hallway, and her entire body softened without permission. She set down her cloth and rose, moving quietly toward the library. The room was shadowed and warm, lit only by the fireplace that crackled with a sound like distant thunder. Lily Rossi sat cross-legged on the Persian rug, her legs folded beneath her like she was much older than 6 years old, a sketch pad balanced on her lap and a pencil moving across the paper in careful lines. The child had copper-colored hair, fine as corn silk, and eyes like dark honey that always found Mia's face first whenever someone dropped her off at this house. "Mama Mia," Lily said, not looking up from her drawing. The name carved a hollow space in Mia's chest. No one had called her that before. No one had called her mother. She had never wanted anything as much as she wanted to deserve that name. Mia sat down beside her on the rug, careful to keep her distance, careful to follow the rules of a woman who cleaned other people's homes. "What are you drawing today?" Lily lifted the sketch pad. A woman with eyes that somehow held both sadness and strength, with a face that Mia recognized as her own, though Lily had made her look less tired, less broken. The child had given her hope in the lines of the drawing. "You," Lily said simply. "But happy. Like you are when no one is watching." Something shifted in Mia's chest. She swallowed. "Why do you draw me?" "Because you are safe," Lily said, and turned the page. "Show me the words again." "The ones I forgot." They worked through the spelling list for 35 minutes. Lily sounded out each word carefully: cat, dog, house, love. When she reached the word love, she stumbled, and Mia guided her through it, letter by letter, and Lily repeated it 3 times until it became perfect. The child never asked where Mia came from, never asked why she wore a uniform, never asked any of the questions that would have required Mia to admit the truth, that she cleaned this house because it was the only work she could find, that she was paid $18 an hour under the table, that she had no benefits, no security, no future. Lily simply treated her like someone who mattered. At 8:40 p.m., a knock came on the office door. Mia stood in the doorway, holding the foreclosure notice in both hands like it was a live coal that might burn her at any moment. Harold Brennan sat behind his desk, a mahogany monstrosity that cost more than Mia's entire annual salary. He was 58 years old but looked older, his face carved by money and the kind of coldness that only came from deciding very early in life that other people did not matter. Silver hair swept back from his forehead. Eyes like chips of blue ice. A suit that probably cost $2,000, the kind of suit that made a man feel like he was wearing armor. "The notice came this morning," Mia said. Her voice sounded small in the room. "I did not understand it. I have always paid the rent on time. I have never been late." Harold smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had already decided the conversation's ending. "Times change," he said. "The neighborhood is being redeveloped. Property values have doubled. I need the building to be cleared for investors. But listen, Mia, he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. I like you. You work hard. You are reliable. I would hate to see you on the street with nowhere to go. The way he said it, she felt the trap closing. I have a proposition, Harold continued. Something mutually beneficial. You could work off the debt in other ways. More private ways. I am sure a woman in your position understands that finding $65,000 is impossible. But you have other assets? The meaning was clear as glass. It sat between them like a third person in the room. Mia felt her hands begin to shake. She gripped the foreclosure notice tighter. No, Mr. Brennan. I will find the money. I will get a second job. I will figure it out. You have 2 weeks, he said, and turned back to his computer, already dismissing her. You are welcome to try. The kitchen was empty at 9:20 p.m. Mia had begun her evening cleaning when Harold appeared in the doorway, and her first instinct was to make herself smaller, to move to the corner, to take up less space. But he closed the door behind him, and the sound of it, a soft click, echoed like a lock being turned. He moved toward her with his hands already reaching. You misunderstood me earlier, he said, his voice low and smooth. It was not a question. His hand found her wrist and twisted it gently, a reminder of his strength. Mia's heart became a trap bird. She pulled away, and Harold's face flushed red at the refusal, at the idea that she would say no to him twice in one evening. I cannot do this, Mia said. Her voice was barely a whisper. I cannot. He grabbed her collar. The fabric of her uniform tore with a sound like breaking glass. Exposure. Cold air on her collarbone. His hand on her throat, not squeezing, just resting there, and Mia thought of every woman who had ever been trapped in a space with no way out. She thought of her mother, whose hands had been gentle and warm and were now dust in an urn she could not afford a home to hold. Something inside her fractured and reformed as rage. She pushed backward with everything she had. Her shoulder connected with his chest. Harold staggered, and his back hit the desk, and in that moment of imbalance, Mia ran. Her legs carried her toward the kitchen door. Her breath came in panic gasps. But Harold was faster. He caught her wrist, spun her around, and pushed her backward toward the wall. Her head hit the corner of the cabinet. Pain exploded through her skull like a star shattering. Blood pooled in her mouth. Her vision went gray at the edges. 2 weeks, Harold hissed, his breath reeking of whiskey. Bring the money or bring yourself. Those are your only options. Mia ran. She did not remember leaving the mansion. She did not remember the cold that cut through the tear in her uniform or the way the frozen Boston streets blurred beneath her feet. She only knew that the world was made of darkness and the ache in her skull was a lighthouse, guiding her forward, away, anywhere but there. The frosted glass door of Rosso's restaurant appeared like a mirage at the corner of Newbury Street. Warmth and light spilled out. She pushed through it and collapsed against the mahogany host stand, her hand leaving a smear of blood across the polished wood. The restaurant fell silent. Every eye turned toward her. She was a ghost now, but not invisible, impossible to ignore with blood running down her face and her uniform torn and her terror radiating like heat. And in the private booth in the back corner, the one reserved for the man who owned nothing that could not be taken by force or money, a man named Nico Rossi looked up from his wine and saw her falling. He saw the way she looked like someone who had nothing left to lose. He saw in her face every desperate person he had ever been willing to destroy, and something in him recognized something in her, and he rose from his seat before his mind had time to catch up to his body. He did not know yet that this woman had spent 3 days a week with his daughter, teaching her to read, to spell, to believe in herself. He did not know that Lily drew her face in every sketch, called her Mama, loved her with the fierce certainty of a 6-year-old who had decided that this woman was the only safe place in the world. He only knew that she was falling, and he moved forward to catch her. The paramedics moved like they had done this 1,000 times before, rolling the stretcher through the restaurant's mahogany doors, their radio crackling with medical codes that meant nothing to Mia Santos. She stood frozen beside the private booth, her hand still pressed against the white tablecloth where Nico Rossi's blood had soaked through, spreading outward like an accusation. The wound on his side was deep. She had seen enough suffering in her 27 years to recognize the difference between hurt and danger, and this was danger. Tony and Sal had not moved. They stood like statues in tailored suits that probably cost more than everything Mia owned, their hands loose at their sides but their eyes tracking every movement, every paramedic, every exit. When the stretcher wheels hit the brass doorframe with a soft metallic click, Sal's jaw tightened. The restaurant was trying to pretend nothing had happened. The other diners had returned to their plates, their wine glasses, their carefully constructed distance from violence. But Mia could feel the electricity in the air, that razor-thin vibration that comes after something breaks and everyone is pretending the world is still whole. One of the paramedics, a woman with grey streaking her dark hair, approached the booth. She was looking at Mia, at the blood that had dripped from the gash above her eye onto the white napkin she was holding. "You need transport too," the paramedic said, not unkindly. Mia shook her head. "It is nothing." But Nico Rossi, even as they were strapping him to the stretcher, even as his breathing had become shallow and his skin had taken on the color of old bone, had turned his head toward her with an intensity that made her step backward. "Take her," he said to Tony. His voice was thin now, stretched like wire. "Take her somewhere safe." "Boss, the hospital," Tony started. "After," Nico said. The paramedics lifted the stretcher. His hand reached out, and for a moment Mia thought he was reaching for her, but his eyes had already closed. "After I am fixed. The girl goes somewhere safe." The paramedics carried him out into the November night where the ambulance waited with its lights painting the frozen street in alternating red and white. The sound of the siren starting up was like a scream that did not end, climbing higher and higher until it disappeared into the distance. Mia stood alone with two men she did not know, wearing a torn maid's uniform, holding a napkin against a cut that was already starting to clot. The clock on the restaurant wall showed 11:58 p.m. Tony pulled out his phone without looking at her. He made a call. Listened. Hung up. "The boss says you do not go back to Brennan's house tonight," he said quietly. "I have to," Mia said. Her voice came out smaller than she expected. "I have work tomorrow morning. I clean the kitchen at 5 o'clock. If I do not show up..." "You do not go back," Sal said. He was looking at her with an expression she could not read. Pity, maybe. Or something heavier. Boss's orders. The thing about living in poverty is that you learn very quickly not to argue with authority. You learn that men in expensive suits are rarely wrong about the things that matter. You learn that survival depends on knowing when to fight and when to fold, and something in the way these two men stood suggested that this was a moment for folding. Mia gathered her coat, the same coat she had worn for 3 winters, the hem held up with safety pins, and followed them out into the Boston cold. The black Mercedes was parked directly in front of the restaurant, engine running. The windows were tinted so dark that she could not see the driver. Tony opened the back door for her with a gesture that might have been courtesy or might have been a cage closing. The interior of the car smelled like leather and expensive cologne and the faint ghost of gun oil. They drove through empty streets. The city at midnight had a different face than the city in daylight, sharper, more honest, full of people moving through shadows with purpose. Mia held her $200 and the foreclosure notice in her pocket like a prayer that had already been answered with no. She watched the buildings pass outside the window, growing larger, more polished, until they pulled up in front of a building made entirely of glass and steel. "Where are we?" she asked. "Somewhere safe," Tony said again, as if he had already answered this question 1,000 times. The elevator climbed so high that her ears popped. When the doors opened, they revealed a penthouse that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the whole of Boston spread out below like a circuit board of light. The furniture was modern and clean. The kitchen had granite countertops. There was a doctor waiting by the couch, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steady hands. "Let me see that cut," the doctor said, patting the cushion beside her. Mia Saturday. The doctor cleaned the wound with alcohol that stung like betrayal, then stitched it closed with 6 neat stitches. The kind of stitching you could only get if you had money, if you knew people, if you were the sort of person who mattered. How is he? Mia asked while the doctor worked. The man from the restaurant. Will he? He will live, the doctor said. She taped a bandage over the stitches. He is strong. And he has no intention of dying before he finishes what he started. Mia did not understand what that meant. She would understand later. By 1:30 in the morning, the doctor had packed up her equipment and left. The penthouse was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Boston's midnight traffic rising up from the streets below. Mia tried the door. Tony was standing in front of it like a very well-dressed wall. I need to go home, she said. I have work in the morning. No, Tony said. You do not. You do not understand. If I do not show up, Harold will. She stopped. The look on Tony's face suggested that he understood perfectly what Harold would do. That perhaps Nico Rossi had already told him. That perhaps she was the only one in this room who did not understand exactly how much trouble she was in. Sal appeared with a bowl of soup. It was homemade, she could tell by the way the vegetables were cut, by the steam rising from the surface, by the fact that someone had cared enough to heat it through. She had not eaten a meal prepared by someone else in 8 years. She ate it sitting on the edge of the couch. The warmth spread through her like forgiveness. The boss's daughter talks about you, Tony said suddenly. He was sitting across from her in a chair that probably cost more than Mia's entire apartment. Lily. She draws pictures of you. She calls you Mama. Mia's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. The name Lily connected to something inside her that she had tried very hard not to connect to, because connecting meant caring, and caring meant loss. She had learned that lesson 8 years ago. How do you know that? She whispered. Because the boss knows everything that matters to him, Sal said. He was standing by the window, looking out at the city. And his daughter matters to him more than anything. The soup was getting cold. Mia finished it anyway. She did not waste food. At 2:45 in the morning, Sal's phone buzzed. He stepped into the kitchen. When he came back, he said, "The boss is out of surgery. Stable. He wants to see you in the morning." "I cannot," Mia said. "I have to figure out how to pay Harold. I have 14 days to come up with $65,000 or he takes my apartment and everything I own." Tony wrote down the number on a piece of paper. Looked at it. Looked at her. "You do not owe Harold Brennan $65,000, he said very quietly. "I owe him everything," Mia said. "I have been living in his house for 8 years. I have been paying him rent and my job barely covers half of it and now he is saying," she stopped. She could not say what he was saying. Not to these two men in their tailored suits and their careful, measured looks. "You do not owe him anything," Sal said. "That is the only thing that matters right now." They gave her a guest bedroom on the 3rd side of the penthouse. The sheets were clean. The pillows were soft. The window showed the city lights stretching out toward infinity. Mia sat on the bed in her torn maid's uniform and let herself cry for the first time in days. She pulled the foreclosure notice from her pocket. $65,000. Due in 14 days. She had $200 to her name. The math was impossible. What she did not know was that at that exact moment, Nico Rossi was lying in a hospital bed 3 miles away, making phone calls from his cell phone despite the nurses telling him to rest. He was calling people. Giving orders. Setting things in motion. The knife wound in his side had not killed him, but it had woken something in him, a memory of his own daughter's voice, asking every day if Mama was coming to teach her to read. Meanwhile, across the city in a mansion that was worth more than most people earned in a lifetime, Harold Brennan sat in his office with Victoria Ashford, pouring scotch into crystal glasses. Victoria was 52 years old and had perfected the art of cruelty wrapped in civility. She wore pearls. She wore designer suits. She had pale blonde hair cut in a bob that cost $300 to maintain. To anyone who did not know her, she looked like a woman who did charitable work and attended galas. To the people who lived in Harold's buildings, she was a nightmare made flesh. The maid ran, Harold said, swirling his scotch. The ice made a sound like breaking glass. Victoria smiled. They always run. They always come back. What if she does not? Victoria examined her manicure. Then we take her apartment and sell it. We have already listed 14 properties this year. The profit from her unit alone will cover that broken pipe at the Thornton building. Where else can she go? She has nothing. She is nothing. They clinked glasses. 14 properties. Fabricated violations. Fake evictions. A scheme so carefully constructed that it looked like law, like legitimate business, like the natural order of a city that had learned to devour its own poor. But at 4 a.m, when Victoria lay in her expensive bed in her expensive home, she did not feel the net tightening around her life. She did not feel the phone calls being made. She did not know that a man in a hospital bed, held together by stitches and rage, had already decided that she would understand, before the end, what it felt like to be invisible. The sound of the city at dawn was different. It was the sound of hope arriving for some and desperation deepening for others. And Mia Santos, sleeping fitfully in a bed that was not hers, did not know that her entire life was about to be rewritten by a man she had only just met, a man who was bleeding and wounded and absolutely unstoppable. Mia wakes in the guest room to winter light pressing against unfamiliar curtains. The bed is soft. Too soft. For a moment, her body does not remember where it is, and panic floods her chest, the old panic, the one that comes with waking in places that are not safe. Then she remembers. The restaurant. The blood. Nico's hand on hers in the darkness. She sits up slowly. Clean clothes are folded on the chair beside the bed, jeans, a sweater in deep gray, both new with a tag still attached. The cost of that sweater could have fed her for a month. She changes into them without thinking about it, muscle memory from 8 years of adapting to other people's spaces, other people's rules. The kitchen is all marble and stainless steel. Tony stands by the coffee maker, his suit already perfect at this early hour. He hands her a cup without asking how she takes it. Black. He somehow knew. Boss wants to see you, Tony says. His voice is careful, neutral, the way people speak around fragile things. Hospital. 2 hours. She nods. The cup trembles slightly in her hands. The hospital room is private, the kind of private that costs money Mia cannot calculate. Nico sits propped against pillows, bandaged across his chest and shoulder, but his eyes are clear and burning with something that looks like purpose. Lily sits curled beside him, a blue crayon moving across white paper in wide, looping strokes. When Lily sees Mia, she launches off the bed like something released from a cage. Mamma Mia! The child crashes into her arms. Mia holds her, breathing in the shampoo scent, the pure innocence of a 4-year-old who has decided that this woman, this stranger, is mother. Her eyes close. For 8 years, she has not let herself cry. Now, holding Lily, she feels something crack open inside her chest, not tears yet, but the possibility of them, the permission. She has been asking for you all morning, Nico says quietly. His voice is different here, softer around the edges, but no less commanding. Since dawn. Mia sets Lily down gently. The child returns to her coloring, satisfied that her mama is present. I should go, Mia says. The old script, the one she knows. I have already imposed too much on your. Sit, Nico says. Not a request. A command wrapped in gentleness. She sits. He watches her for a long moment, the way a surgeon studies a fracture before deciding how to set it. Tell me about Harold Brennan, Nico says. The words come then, 8 years compressed into sentences. The mansion where she cleaned. The increasing demands. The debt that grew like a cancer, $65,000, she needed it in 2 weeks or the foreclosure notice would become final, and she would have nothing, nowhere to go. The way Harold's eyes changed when he realized she was trapped, the way he began to smile when she entered rooms, knowing that desperation had made her powerless. She does not mention the physical abuse. Not with Lily coloring 3 feet away. But Nico sees it anyway. He sees the way her hand unconsciously rises to her ribs when she mentions Harold's name, the flinch that travels through her body like electricity. "How long has he been hurting you?" Nico asks. His voice is perfectly calm, which makes it terrifying. Lily is absorbed in her drawing, red crayon now, adding details to something that might be a house or a heart. 8 years, Mia whispers. "Show me." She hesitates for only a moment. Then she lifts the back of her sweater, just enough. The scars crisscross her back in patterns that look deliberate, like someone took time with them, like someone enjoyed the architecture of her pain. Scars running in every direction like a map of hell, some faded to white, some still holding the ghost of purple beneath the surface. When she lowers her sweater, she does not turn around. She cannot look at his face. Tony and Sal, standing by the door, she had not noticed they were there, exchange a look neither has seen in the 15 years they have worked for Nico. It is the look of men watching their boss's face harden into something final and irreversible. "You are not going back there," Nico says. It is not a promise. It is a fact being spoken into existence. "Ever." "I owe $65,000, Mia says. "I have to." "You owe nothing." His voice cuts through her objection like a blade. She stops speaking. "That debt is fabricated," Nico continues. His eyes move to Tony. "Pull his records. Financial, residential, all of it. I want to know every transaction, every fabricated violation, every falsified late fee." Tony nods and steps into the hallway, phone already to his ear. "Harold Brennan and Victoria Ashford are running a housing scheme," Nico says to Mia. "They have been doing this for years. Identify vulnerable tenants, immigrants, single mothers, elderly people, trap them with fake violations, manufacture debt, extract money through extortion and fabricated evictions. The federal government is extremely interested in this type of operation." "How do you know?" Mia asks. "Because I know everything that happens in this city," Nico says. "And now I know about him." His hand reaches toward her, and she does not pull away. His fingers trace the edge of her jaw with surprising gentleness, given the violence in his eyes. "It ends tonight," he says. That evening, Mia stands on the penthouse balcony, 30 floors above the city, freezing air cutting through her borrowed sweater. The wind carries the smell of winter and distant salt water from the harbor. She holds the crumpled foreclosure notice in her shaking hands. She had retrieved it from her old apartment before the lock changed, before everything became impossible. Below, the city lights blur through her tears. The city that has devoured her for 8 years, that has taught her the price of being invisible, that has shown her, every single day, that kindness is a luxury reserved for people with money. Part of her does not believe Nico. Part of her is certain she will wake up and this will all evaporate, the safety, the warmth, Lily's small arms around her neck, the promise that somewhere in Boston a man with power has decided that justice matters more than profit. She has been invisible for so long that being seen feels like hallucination. The wind picks up. Frost forms on the railing under her fingers, tiny crystals catching the city light. She closes her eyes and lets herself imagine it, running, disappearing, starting over with her $200 and her ability to endure, safe in the only language she knows, invisibility, silence, survival. Through the glass door, she hears Lily's laugh. Just a small sound, the child playing with wooden blocks in the living room, arranging them into towers that she inevitably knocks down, laughing at her own destruction. Mia opens her eyes. "Lily called me Mama." She stands there for another moment, frost melting against her skin. Then she turns around, walks back inside, chooses to stay. At 11:27 p.m., Mia's phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. A photograph attached. It is her apartment door. A new lock installed. An eviction notice taped across the center in official red letters. The message reads, "You ran. Now you lose everything. HB. Harold has made his move." What Harold does not know, what Harold will never know until federal agents are reading him his rights at 5:47 in the morning, is that at this exact moment, 12 federal agents in tactical gear are taking positions around his mansion. 18 blocks away, another federal team is surrounding Victoria Ashford's penthouse. The raids are simultaneous, surgical, choreographed with the precision of men who have been planning this for 72 hours straight. Nico had made one phone call from his hospital bed. One call to a contact he had kept in reserve for exactly this type of situation, a federal prosecutor who owed him a favor from 15 years ago, back when a younger Nico had provided information that brought down a trafficking ring operating in Boston's North End. That prosecutor had listened to the details of Harold's scheme. The fabricated violations. The 42 families extorted. The $2.3 million in illegal profits flowing into accounts that did not exist officially but existed very much in spreadsheets that forensic accountants were now copying onto flash drives. "We move at dawn," the prosecutor had said. Simultaneous raids. "We have probable cause from the tenant complaints and the financial records." Move at dawn, Nico had agreed. At 5:33 a.m., the world turns over. FBI agents in tactical gear, weapons visible, move through the Brennan mansion like a planned invasion. Battering rams hit the front door and the kitchen entrance simultaneously. They come through shouting, flashlights cutting through the darkness, and Harold Brennan wakes to the end of his life. He stumbles out of bed in silk pajamas, hands up, trembling. He is a different man without his suit, without his position, without the invisible walls that money and cruelty had constructed around him. "There has been a mistake," he says. His voice cracks on the second word. "I am Harold Brennan. I know people. I have lawyers." The lead agent holds up a warrant, and Harold sees his own face printed on it, sees the words housing fraud, extortion, racketeering, conspiracy. "You have the right to remain silent," the agent says. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Harold collapses to his knees on the bedroom floor, begging, his voice breaking into something that was never meant to be broken. "Please, please, I can explain. I can make this go away. I have money." "Tell it to the judge," the agent says flatly. They cuff him. The metal bites into his wrists, cold and final. News cameras are already outside, already filming, because Nico had made a second call to a reporter he knew at the Boston Globe. The footage of Harold Brennan being led out in his pajamas, crying, his face swollen with shock and disbelief, will play on every news channel for days. It will trend on social media. It will become the visual definition of a powerful man brought low by his own cruelty. 18 blocks away, Victoria Ashford answers her door in a designer robe, face composed, still believing that composure is armor. When she sees the agents, she does not panic. "I am calling my lawyer," she says. "Victoria Ashford, you are under arrest as a co-conspirator in a federal housing fraud scheme affecting over 40 tenants and totaling $2.3 million in illegal profits." The blood drains from her face. "I am a property manager. I follow the law. You fabricated violations, forged documents, and extorted vulnerable tenants for 8 years, the agent says. "We have evidence. Bank records. Emails. Recorded phone calls made from your personal cell phone in which you explicitly discussed extorting a tenant for sexual favors in exchange for rent reduction. Would you like to hear the recording?" Her composure shatters like glass. They cuff her. As they lead her out, her neighbors watch from doorways, the same people she smiled at in the lobby, the same social circle she had cultivated so carefully, the same people she had invited to charity galas and wine tastings. Her carefully constructed reputation crumbles in real time, visible and undeniable, recorded by the cameras now capturing her walk of shame. At 7:15 a.m., Mia watches the news in the penthouse living room. Harold's face fills the screen, the headline in bold letters, Boston landlord arrested in massive housing fraud scheme. The reporter details everything with the precision of a man who has been handed a complete investigation. 42 families victimized. $2.3 million stolen. Fabricated evictions. Forged documents. Recordings of tenant abuse. A scheme so carefully constructed that it had fooled city inspectors and housing authorities for 8 years. Then Victoria's arrest. The co-conspirator exposed. The property manager revealed as a predator in designer clothing. Mia's hands cover her mouth. She cannot believe it. The words do not feel real. They sound like someone else's story, someone else's salvation. Tony stands beside her, phone pressed to his ear, listening to a contact at the federal courthouse. 40 years minimum, he says to Nico, who has entered the room moving slowly, still healing but moving. Both of them. The prosecutors are going for maximum. Mia's knees buckle. Sal catches her, guides her to the couch. She is not crying. She is breathing like she has been underwater for 8 years and finally broke the surface. Nico sits beside her. The leather creaks under his weight. It is over, he says. She looks at him, this dangerous man who had called in favors and burned connections to protect her, this man she had known for less than 48 hours. Why, she whispers. Why would you do this for me? Nico glances at Lily, who is drawing at the kitchen table, red crayon moving across white paper with the focused intensity of a child creating something important. Because my daughter already chose you, he says. And I trust her judgment more than my own. 2 months after the arrests, spring thaw melts the last of Boston's winter freeze. Mia stands in the brownstone's kitchen in Back Bay, sunlight pouring through tall windows, and she cannot remember the last time she felt warm without shivering. The space is lived in, real, nothing like the cold mansion where she scrubbed floors for 8 years. Lily's drawings cover the refrigerator, a house with 3 people holding hands, a woman with yellow hair labeled Mama Mia in careful letters, a sun so bright it nearly burns off the page. She wears jeans now. Soft grey sweaters. Her hair hangs loose past her shoulders, and the gash above her eye has healed to a thin scar, barely visible in certain light. The guest room she occupied for 6 weeks became her room without anyone announcing it. Her name is on the door. Her books sit on the nightstand. Her clothes fill half the closet. She has belongings. She has a place. Every morning, Lily runs to her calling Mama Mia, small hands grabbing her waist, and Mia's heart, which learned to close itself long ago, has learned to open again. This morning, they make breakfast together. Lily stands on a stool beside the counter, cracking eggs into a bowl with the seriousness of someone performing surgery. One shell falls in. Mia fishes it out with a spoon, and Lily giggles. They move around each other in the practiced ease of people who have found their rhythm. The pan hisses when Mia pours the mixture in. The smell of butter and warmth fills the kitchen like a prayer answered. Nico comes down at 7, still moving carefully but moving, the bandages smaller now, his breathing easier. He watches from the doorway for a moment before either of them notices him. When he speaks, his voice is rough from sleep. You are spoiling her. Scrambled eggs are not spoiling, Mia says without turning from the stove. They are breakfast. I meant you are spoiling her with your presence. He sits at the kitchen table, the same table where Mia once sat bleeding, where he brought her soup and asked nothing except that she stay. She has asked 3 times this week if you are leaving. Lily's spoon stops moving. Her eyes go wide, small with fear. Are you leaving? Mia turns off the burner. The sizzle dies to silence. She sets down the spatula and looks at Nico, really looks at him, and something in his expression tells her this is not a casual observation. This is a question beneath the question. No, Mia says to Lily. I am not leaving. Lily returns to the eggs. The fear drains from her face like water through a sieve. That night, after Lily is asleep and her door is closed, Nico and Mia sit in the kitchen with cups of tea cooling on the table between them. The brownstone is quiet the way only old buildings can be quiet, with the weight of decades pressing down, the sound of the city muffled by brick and history. Nico's hands wrap around the ceramic mug. She has noticed he does this often, as if holding something warm helps him think. My brother betrayed me, he says suddenly. 15 years ago. We were building something together, and he decided the money we were making was not enough. He wanted more. He made a deal with someone more powerful, someone dangerous. He thought he could make the deal and come out richer. Instead, he came out dead. Mia does not interrupt. She has learned that silence is sometimes the most respectful response. That betrayal cost me more than I can measure, Nico continues. It cost me people I loved. It cost me peace. It cost me any belief that trust was worth the risk. So I stopped trusting. I stopped letting people close. I built walls so high that no one could reach over them. He pauses. Sets the mug down. The ceramic makes a soft sound against the wood. Then you walked into that restaurant bleeding and covered in bruises, and you did not ask me for anything except maybe not to call the police. You just saw someone who needed help, and you tried to help him even though he was a stranger who could have hurt you. I did not know who you were, Mia says. That is exactly the point. You did not care who I was. You just saw a man suffering. He looks at her directly. You saved my life without knowing it. You did not want anything from me. No money, no protection, no favors. You wanted nothing. And that broke something open in me that I thought was sealed shut forever. Mia shakes her head. You saved me. The arrests, the justice, Harold in prison, Victoria. No. Nico's voice is quiet but absolute. You saved yourself. You walked away from Brennan. You chose Lily. You chose to stay when you could have run to another city with $200 and disappeared. I simply made some phone calls. You did the hard thing. You chose to be seen. The distance between them feels smaller than it is. Neither of them has named what is growing in that space, but both of them feel it like a heartbeat, steady, inevitable, undeniable. I don't know how to be part of a family, Mia says. Neither do I, Nico answers. Not really. But I think we can figure it out together. Lily's 7th birthday party blooms in the brownstone's garden 3 weeks later. Balloons in primary colors hang from tree branches. A long table holds a cake decorated with 7 candles and chocolate frosting. 20 children run across the grass, their laughter bouncing off the brick walls. Mia moves through the chaos with a clipboard, checking names, handing out juice boxes, organizing games with the quiet competence of someone who has learned to make order out of chaos by necessity. Nico watches from a bench in the corner, and Tony and Sal stand near the garden gate, their dangerous edges softened by the presence of children. Sal actually smiles. An expression so rare on his face that one of the other attendees, a mother from Lily's school, visibly startles. When the candles are lit, Lily closes her eyes and makes a wish. The room goes quiet. Even the children sense the solemnity of the moment. She opens her eyes and speaks before anyone can tell her not to. I wish Mama Mia stays forever. The candles flicker in the still air. No one moves. Mia's eyes meet Nico's across the cake, and he nods, not a gesture but a vow. A promise written in his expression, absolute and non-negotiable. She nods back. Later that night, after the last child is picked up and the garden is returned to stillness, Nico finds Mia on the brownstone's second-floor landing. She stands at the window looking out at the Boston skyline, the city lights beginning to glow like embers in the darkness. I need to ask you something, Nico says. His voice carries the weight of someone preparing to risk everything on a single moment. Mia turns from the window. Stay, he says. Not as a guest. Not as someone helping raise Lily. Stay as family. As someone who belongs here. As someone who belongs to me. He pauses, and something in his expression breaks open. Lily needs you. I need you. I don't know how to do this, Mia whispers. Neither do I, Nico says again. But I know that every day without you teaching Lily to make scrambled eggs and laugh is a day I do not want to live. I know that when you are in a room, I can breathe easier. I know that you are the first person since my brother's death who I trust more than I trust myself. So please? Say yes. Say you will stay. Mia says yes. The agreement seems to travel through the walls themselves. Within the hour, black SUVs line the street outside the brownstone. 30 men in black suits emerge from the cars and line the sidewalk, standing shoulder to shoulder in perfect formation. They are Nico's men, the ones who work in shadow, who move without being asked, who understand loyalty as something written in blood. Nico leads Mia to the front door. She hesitates, not understanding. What is this? Tradition, Nico says simply. When someone becomes family, everyone knows. He opens the door, and Mia steps onto the threshold. 30 men in black suits stand at attention on the street. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Simply witnessing. The first man, closest to the door, nods his head in formal respect. The gesture travels down the line like dominoes falling, 30 acknowledgements, 30 bows, 30 men recognizing that Mia Santos is no longer invisible. She is protected. She is seen. She is family. Tony stands among them, his scarred face unreadable. Sal is there, the smallest of a smile touching his hard mouth. All of Nico's men, present and formal and absolute in their acceptance. Mia realizes she is trembling. Not from fear. From the weight of being truly witnessed for the first time in her life. 6 months later, autumn paints Boston in gold and rust. Mia walks through the city with Lily's hand in hers, and she no longer glances over her shoulder. Harold Brennan is in federal prison, his appeals denied, his empire dismantled and distributed among families who no longer live in fear. Victoria Ashford shares a cell block with him, her designer clothing replaced with orange scrubs, her social standing erased like pencil from paper. Mia passes her old apartment building. New management. Happy tenants. She does not stop, but she acknowledges the distance between who she was and who she has become. That evening, family dinner at the brownstone. Nico at the head of the table, Mia to his right, Lily across from them, talking about her day at school with the unguarded honesty of a child who feels safe. Nico reaches across the table and takes Mia's hand. She does not pull away. Lily grins, delighted that her family is whole. Later, in what used to be the guest room but is now her room, Mia finds the crumpled foreclosure notice in a drawer. She has kept it as a reminder, a talisman, a proof that the nightmare was real. She smooths it carefully, reading the amounts and dates one last time. Then she tears it in half. In quarters. Into pieces too small to ever reform. She throws them away. That life is gone. The final scene crystallizes like a photograph being developed. Mia, Nico, and Lily walk through Boston Common on a clear autumn evening. Leaves fall around them like rain. The city lights glow gold and amber. Lily runs ahead, laughing, chasing a leaf that tumbles on the wind. Nico pulls Mia close, and she lets herself be held by him in the way she once thought was impossible. Mia speaks softly, her words meant only for him. I thought being invisible kept me safe. I thought if no one saw me, no one could hurt me. I was wrong about that. The people who seem invisible are not weak. We carry light even in the darkest places. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to see that light and everything changes. Nico looks at her, then at Lily playing in the leaves, then back at Mia. Sometimes the people who seem invisible carry the greatest light. I know, Mia says. I am looking at her. Nico smiles. So am I. If this story moved your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you do not miss what is coming tomorrow. Drop a comment telling us which moment hit you hardest. We read every single one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for seeing the invisible. See you tomorrow.